This is a review of the week one quiz, mostly on the Borges story Funes the Memorias, but also on the first poem he read by Sappho. Question one: what are the first two words of Funes the Memorias? They are "I remember." Question two: suggest why these are the first two words of this story. Of course, that's a matter of interpretation. But if you look at the first paragraph of the story, the verb remember appears 4 or 5 times. So it's obvious that that's intentional. And so starting the thing with uh, that phrase "I remember" is obviously important to Borges, and it is the same in the Spanish. I looked it up. The original Spanish. I don't know what it is anymore, but it's "I remember" in Spanish. Why are these the first two words of the story? I think it's pretty obvious that this story is about memory. The central interest or central idea of the story is someone who has an absolutely perfect memory. The idea of someone having total recall of everything that they've ever experienced in every one of its details. That's the central device of the story. So, starting at "I remember" is is important. Of course, it gets very meta, if you want to use that term. That is, it's Borges or the narrator remembering something that happened, and it's about remembering somebody who has a perfect memory. So, how well does anybody remember anything who doesn't have a perfect memory? So that if you begin to think about the role of memory in this story, it becomes more and more complex. But I think it's clear that this is a short story about memory. Question two: what happens to Funes besides his physical injury? What he has this accident with the horse. He gets total recall. Something happens. He's already obviously has this gift for knowing exactly what time it is, and perhaps other things. But it gets deepened by whatever happens to him when he falls off the horse. He gets if anybody can have such a thing, he gets an absolutely perfect memory, so he can remember every moment of every day that he's ever lived. Question four: what is the narrator's assessment of the value of Funes's abilities? Well, it's an ambiguous thing. Um, he obviously it stands in awe of Funes and realizes that intellectually he's like an ant compared to Funes. Funes learns Latin in a day, and something that would take months and months and years of study. On the narrator's part, he realizes that Funes can do it in uh, hours, one would think. But at the same time, he has that line where he says that he doesn't think that Funes was really good at thinking, because thinking to a certain extent requires forgetting, because thinking requires abstractions and general ideas. And if one sees every particular perception of everything as being absolutely unique, then that may be a hindrance and an obstacle to thinking. So, memory, to a certain extent, can be an obstacle to thinking, is at least what's suggested. And then, question five, I wanted to make sure we got something from Sappho. What does Sappho want from Aphrodite? Aphrodite being the goddess of love. I think it's quite clear, at least in our translation, and translations matter with Sappho. You'll see that there are many, many different translations from the ancient Greek, and they differ significantly from each other. But I think it's clear in our translation that Sappho, and students in my in-person classes and your own uh, comments on the thing and discussion boards have suggested that I think she wants two things. She wants to be relieved of her suffering, and her suffering is because she's in love. She's hopelessly and unrequitedly in love. That is, she's in love with a woman who doesn't love her back. So she wants to be relieved of that suffering, but I think clearly she wants Aphrodite to make that woman fall in love with her, which is a morally ambivalent thing, I guess. So that was just what I was thinking of in the first exam. We'll have these exams every week. I think it's pretty easy, and that's because of the nature of the text. I mean, this is not an easy question, question four, nor is question five an easy question, but these are reading knowledge exams. They probably will become more difficult as we go on, and it's worthwhile to watch these video reviews because we will be having a midterm exam and a final exam. So anything that you can do to deepen your knowledge of the text will make you do better on those exams.